You look good. All right. Everybody, welcome to our little Thursday chit chat. I'm John Fruitkin. We got Adam Bach, special guest star today, Carrie Tatkin. So before I get started on kind of the exciting stuff, let's do the reminders, okay? It's supposed to be an interactive experience. That means on the bottom, you go to participants. You could raise your hand. We'll call on you. Worst comes to worst, and you're chicken to do that, go to Q&A, ask a question there. It'll help guide the discussion, okay? We're recording this for all time. That's mostly to make Carrie feel uncomfortable.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
We have a few things we're going to talk about today. Okay, first of all, we are going to introduce Carrie. She's going to talk a little bit about bankruptcy and how that kind of interacts. Adam's going to talk about payroll protection plan, forgiveness, and that's probably going to be enough. I do have some comments about what we're going to be doing as far as reopening. We can talk about that a little bit more next week, about what sort of your rights are, I guess, as an employer to protect your employees and to protect yourselves. And so we'll talk a little bit about those employment issues on the next episode. There is another button down there that says polls. Feel free to play around with that. I think we actually have one today. If we don't, sorry, too bad. It's just me learning to use the software. So as always, we're going to have about 15-ish minutes of this little discussion, maybe 20, and then we are going to take questions. That is certainly the much more important part of this, and so make sure that you let us know what is on your mind, because that's the critical piece. All right, with that being said, I am going to do a brief introduction of my partner, Carrie Tatkin. Hey, Carrie, how are you?
Hey, good.
All right, so on today's small business update, I'm going to talk about Carrie. She is the best. It says so on the slide. She was also the first lawyer to join the firm. Fun fact, she is from Cleveland, Ohio. We went to the same high school. I'm not saying who graduated before who. It was just not the same year. And now she's on a webcast. She is also the head of our bankruptcy practice. And so nothing says fun like Carrie talking about bankruptcy. So Carrie, take it away. Give us 5 minutes on what it's all about.
Okay. So, from a small business perspective, this is going to be super basic, but it's really just kind of an introduction to sort of some of the things that might, be relevant to our small business owners and clients. So one of the first things is there's kind of two sides to bankruptcy. Either you're filing bankruptcy or you're affected by the bankruptcy because somebody owes you money. So, what if one of your customers, patients, clients files for bankruptcy? What do you do? And, the general answer is you do nothing. You stop. Whatever it is you were doing, if somebody owes you money, you stop doing it. Because when the bankruptcy is filed, there's an automatic stay that goes into effect. And if you continue to pursue your customer, your patient, your vendor, whoever owes you money, you're going to get a notice from the bankruptcy court that the company or the person has filed bankruptcy, and then you stop. And presumably, maybe you give us a call and we can help you figure it out, because we don't want you to violate federal law by continuing to pursue that person. So, but if your customer or your patient files bankruptcy, the question is, am I ever going to get paid? And the answer is, yeah, you might get paid, because there's a few different kind of bankruptcies. If the person files a Chapter 7, well, there's some likelihood you won't get paid, but there are reorganizing type of bankruptcies in which the folks just need a little bit of time to restructure. You may get paid everything, you may get paid something, but in either event, you will get notified and you'll be able to appear in that bankruptcy and sometimes even vote on, if it's a reorganizing type of bankruptcy, you may have some say in, kind of how you're treated. But you'll want to pay very close attention to any notices you receive from the bankruptcy court and follow the directions that are in there. But as a small business owner, and because we have very little time to really go into details, but as a small business owner, and I know everybody out there is struggling to some extent. I think there's very few businesses out there that haven't been affected by what's going on now. You know, what happens if your small business or just can't turn things around? What if the fear is there that no matter what the programs are out there, maybe you did get a PPP loan, maybe you didn't get a PPP loan, you know, that's something we've been talking about for a few weeks here, you know, and some businesses just aren't going to really make it out in one piece. You know, so what can you do? Corporations, LLCs can file reorganizing bankruptcies, but sometimes, and if it's a real small business, sometimes it really just comes down to, you know, how am I the owner of this tiny small business that, you know, I'm able to support my family, I'm able to do all these things with my business, but what if it just can't make it? And what if I signed, you know, personal guarantees? You know, am I just, I think some people are going to be very scared to think about, oh my gosh, now what can be done? And the answer is, you know, as an individual, if you've got personal liability on those sorts of things, you know, there are options. There's liquidating bankruptcies, there's reorganizing bankruptcies, and these different ones give you a fresh start. And the idea behind a fresh start is, you know, everybody runs into hard times sometimes, and the main thing to do is to be able to wipe your slate clean. Corporations can do the same thing. A lot of times it's not necessary for corporations themselves to file the bankruptcy because they can just kind of wind up their operations. But sometimes if the business is big enough and it makes sense to reorganize, you know, then that's a Chapter 11. There's even a Small Business Reorganization Act that's recently been passed that is a little bit of a quicker way, a little streamlined Chapter 11 for folks that need to reorganize, hopefully more quickly. There's very few of those kind of cases that have been filed, so we're still feeling our way around that. But let's see, I guess just, you know, talking more about the fresh start, I think that there's a lot of folks feel some amount of shame about a bankruptcy, whether it's a business or a personal bankruptcy. And, you know, I deal a lot with consumer debtors and some small business owners. And, you know, again, when we look at it from a business standpoint, the whole idea is to get folks back on their feet. Once they're back on their feet, they can then go contribute to the economy again and, you know, kind of bring new life into the economy. So that's sort of the fresh start policy behind bankruptcy, and one that, you know, we try to remind people who are feeling really terrible about that decision that it's actually good for you, but it's also good for the economy as well.
All right, Carrie, you made me want to file bankruptcy.
It's so much fun. You just want to go out and do it now. I know.
All right, so Carrie's available for free consultations for business owners. Just drop an email to her at tatkin@radixlaw.com, and she's happy to answer some basic questions. And we're going to keep her around mostly because she makes us, she balances out the team. So my other partner, Adam Bach, is going to talk about getting you money. Actually, we're not going to talk about getting you money, but I do have a quick little note. I believe it's today from 4 o'clock to midnight. We have a special deal running for small banks. Did you know about this, Adam? Less than $1 billion of assets?
No.
This is a big day. 4 p.m.
So is this the money that was set aside?
This is the time that's set aside. Only small banks could access the SBA portal.
Wow.
So get your applications in, small banks. And I know a lot of people here have applied with small banks. And so now that I figured out polling, I know that some people are still waiting on theirs. And
so is this like stores giving special hours for the elderly?
yes, this is the poor little banks with less than $1 billion.
Get rid of the big
8-hour window.
You get the little people in there
in the middle of the night.
I like it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cute.
Yeah.
All right. So I know a lot of people are frustrated. I also know a lot of people are tuning in because they want to know about forgiveness. A couple things before Adam starts. First of all, Adam's going to talk about what it is that we know about loan forgiveness. I'm going to talk about what we don't know about loan forgiveness. Okay. And the second thing, and much more important element here, is the fact that Adam put together slides and I couldn't get them in the right format. So this highly professional little program that we do is about to kind of like slide into, you know, a little bit less professional or something like that. So I apologize in advance. It is on me. It is not on Adam. With that being said, I'm turning it over to Adam to go ahead and get this going.
All right. So we have any of the slides, or should I just go from mine?
I don't know. You can't see them on mine?
I can't see them, no.
Oh, okay. Why don't you pop them up?
Okay.
Or I can do it this way. Let's do it this way. Can we see them now?
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So we're going to talk about a couple of things that affect your PPP loan forgiveness. Everybody wants to know how they can apply. The key is you have to apply through your bank. You know, once your 8-week period is over, then you can apply and prove to your bank that you used the money how you were supposed to, and then they forgive the loan. You know, John talked about the things we don't know. I think we could, the list of things we don't know might exceed the things that we do know at this point, but I'll talk about a couple of things. So many of you have said that you've applied for the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and have gotten up to a $10,000 grant. Some have actually gotten the loan, but this $10,000 grant or $5,000 or $3,000, whatever you got, is to be deducted from your loan forgiveness. You also, your loan forgiveness is reduced if you terminate employees. So they're going to look at the number of employees you had prior to the economic injury, prior to the COVID-19, and then compare that with your staff that you have now. And if you've reduced, then your loan forgiveness goes down as well. Same thing with wages. You know, they don't want you to cut salaries and wages for people. So if you do more than 25%, that could also impact your loan forgiveness. And it might, you know, and as a reminder, anything that's not forgiven is simply a low interest loan. So it's not terrible, but obviously we'd like to maximize the loan forgiveness. So the last piece is just keep detailed records for the end of your 8-week period. You're going to have to prove to the bank how you used the money, and we want to help you maximize and make sure that you can you know, get forgiven the total amount if at all possible.
So let me make kind of a quick general point, okay? What they're looking at is the number of employees that you had during a measuring period against the period, this 8-week period after you have the loan. Those two measuring periods are basically the first 2 months of this year, or a longer period that measures against last year. That's February 15th through June 30th of 2019. And so the first step in order to calculate this is you're going to have to go back and you're going to have to look at those two measuring periods. And you want to use the period where you had the least number of full-time employees. Now, one of our questions, our trivia questions, is what is a full-time employee? And one of the suggestions for that came from the accountants. And they decided they would do something clever and just use the Obamacare number. So the same way you calculate it. That is possible. That's going to be the way we calculate full-time employees. What I suggest is that you basically look at your employees and you look at people who are more than 30 or 35 hours, count them as full-time, and then count the rest as half, just for purposes of planning. We don't know what the final rule is going to be. Ultimately, if you have less people, full-time equivalent employees, working during the 8-week period, it will reduce your amount of forgiveness unless you hire them back by June 30th, okay? So your actual paperwork to do your loan forgiveness, even if you got the loan early, you're gonna wait until after June 30th. Now, another trivia question that we have is, do you just have to have them that day? Do you get to just hire people on June 30th? So, by the way, the answer is probably no, but we don't know what that period is. We don't know how long you need to retain them. What we strongly believe is that those people don't necessarily need to be the same people. So in other words, if you made layoffs and you want to change your staff, or that person found another job, or that person retired, you can do that. And so this is not meant to be perfect math. One other point, it is not anticipated that the entirety of your loan will be forgiven for most companies. The reason for that is multifold. First of all, generally speaking, we have less employees as a group with pretty high unemployment, in case you didn't notice. But then the second reason has a little bit to do with the way that we calculate the loan amount in the first place. We take 2.5 months of your payroll costs. All that you're being forgiven is 8 weeks of your payroll cost, plus rent, plus utilities. And so those expenses that you are taking beyond the amount of your payroll could only be 25% of the loan. So it is likely that you are going to owe some of the money at the end. So as we get more rules going, we'll try to get that out. We'll talk next week. You have to show up next week to vote if we keep doing this, okay? So if you show up next week and we decide we're going to keep doing this, we'll keep giving you updates about what the rules are. Now, of course, the big question was, John, you promised us the rules. And the SBA said, no, we kind of put the rules in the questions and answers, and it's kind of in the interim rule. We don't need to do anything else within the 30-day period. But every few days, they are telling us new things. For example, Shake Shack and the Lakers should probably give their money back. And anybody with more than $2 million in a loan is subject to higher level of scrutiny. And so we are learning new things from the SBA every day, including the answer to question 37 today, which is whether or not companies that are owned by larger companies are eligible for the payroll protection program. And they said, see the answer to number 31, which basically said if you have access to capital markets, you are not eligible. So there are some companies that will be returning the money. We don't know, by the way, if that means that money goes back in the pot or just gets forfeited forever. So that part is still a little bit unclear. And that might just be a software issue. I don't know. All right, anything to correct me? Can we talk to people?
Well, I just had one other thing. I noticed that on the Q&A, they said that, do banks have to verify this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Or can they trust the borrower? And they basically said, you can trust the borrower, just make them sign a statement that says it's all true and correct. So it's yet to be seen how much scrutiny is going to go on, but they are making somebody, under oth say that this is all true.
Yeah, that's right. So you are going to have to super promise and swear under oath, but they will need some backup documents. So we already know that they've given a couple examples of payroll reports and canceled checks from leases and things like that. So it's a little bit like Carrie's world, right? Everybody promises and signs under oath, but everybody still looks at the backup documents. And so it's the same. And I would anticipate that. And I would also anticipate every bank's going to interpret this in a different way, even if we get some more guidance. All right. Brent Karchner gets the first questions. You ready? What period are they comparing for payroll costs? So I think we talked about that. You're going to have 2 measuring periods to pick from. Okay. And those and then your covered period is going to be the 8 weeks during the loan. But here's the trickier question. I don't know if you know the answer to this, Adam. You ready?
Yeah.
For the 8 weeks of payroll, are they using payroll paid on a cash basis or payroll earned accrual? Now, I will give you the hint. Okay, Adam? It says incurred in the law. Does that change your answer? Is it the amount of payroll? So like the Radix law firm, we get paid on the 20th and the 5th for payroll through the 15th and the 30th. So what dates do you use?
Well, I guess if the loss is incurred, I would imagine that even if it's paid afterwards, as long as it was for that pay period, that it would qualify. Do you get a guess here, Carrie? This is just legal guess. The answer is we don't know. So this is what the accountant said. The accountant said, "You are killing us. This is what we want to do." So this is what the accountants want to do. And Brent, I hope you're enjoying we don't have the right answer for you yet, but at least we're honest. The answer is we don't know yet. What the accountants want to do is they just want to use clean pay periods for kind of obvious reasons. And instead of using the actual 8-week period, in other words, the 12th of April
through, the 11th of June or whatever for 8 weeks, instead of doing that. Although, wait, that's 2 months. So it's like June 3rd or something, right? So instead of using these goofy dates, they just take your first payroll after you get the money. Now that makes like a ton of sense. So I can't promise we're going to do that because that makes a ton of sense. But that is what they want. Now, yeah, I mean, Carrie and Adam are right. Like incurred can mean either thing, right? And so this is an open issue and it is an open question. One thing they did clarify, by the way, is included in payroll costs can include stipends and things like that. So if you are housing somebody, paying for their housing, for example, that can be included as long as it's below the $100,000 a year total. Okay. All right. Couple questions kind of coming out of the chat. Just as a quick reminder, if you throw it in the Q&A, I can actually see it, but I see these. So question is, what if an employee quits, but I hire another person? And the answer to that is you almost certainly can. In other words, it's just full-time equivalence. It is not necessarily going to be the same person. But that does beg the question, by the way, in order to maximize your amount of forgiveness, it may benefit a company to have a higher headcount. In other words, to hire people at a lower rate of pay in order to get maximum relief from the higher earning people. And so for a place like a dentist's office, I see Dr. Wilson, or a place like a law firm like Radix, where we have some people who make more than others, it is very beneficial for us to have our administrative staff, for example, working. Kind of makes some sense, hopefully.
So we have 10 receptionists. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, something like that. But just make sure you have some. We've got one that, by the way, this is not atypical, which is in 2019, there was a 2-week period where I had 29 employees. Other times I had 0. Then I have 2 right now. What do I do? This has been really impactful. And so the answer is that they're going to take an average. And so there's those 2 measuring periods. You're going to take the lower, but we believe your number will have to be 1 or greater, right? Because you needed to have employees in order to get this loan in the first place. So if one of the periods you have, in fact, 0 employees, we suspect that your minimum will be 1, but we don't know.
So John, just to clarify, the 2 periods you're talking about, you can either have January and February of 2020,
yeah,
or February through June of 2019.
Right.
So a year ago, a snapshot of what it looked like a year ago versus now, or January and February of this year, immediately prior to COVID-19. And the employer gets to choose whichever is more favorable to them. That's the one they get to pick.
Correct. What if we hire somebody new? Can we create a position because of the loan? The answer is yes. Yes, you can. As far as we know. By the way, I reserve all my rights to, as I invent answers, to change them based on actual guidance, but that is believed to be true. So we have a question about the $100,000 cap and salary that was used. Is that going to be used again? And that answer is yes. Okay, the $100,000 cap on salary will be the same amount, and so you'll take that over an 8-week period. And I think I did the math. It's 8 to divide by 52 or whatever, and times 100,000. I think it's like 15 or 16,000 bucks. Will you be able to use the PPP for medical health insurance costs? And the answer is yes. It can be used for benefits. That is a reasonably, broad definition. It could be used for certain tax payments, but that does not include FICA. But same rules apply. Same kind of, rules for calculating it in the first place are going to apply to forgiveness, we think. Okay. So we do have a couple questions still about the disaster loans. Do you want to talk about what the current status is? My understanding is they're capped out at 25,000 total right now, even if you apply.
Well, the research I did said that the cap for 25,000 was for unsecured.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like you can get larger loans, but it'd be more of like a traditional application process where they want to see collateral. justification for loaning you that money.
Got
Right
it.
now, we're kind of in this weird world with PPP loans where everybody qualifies just about, you know, and there's not a lot of analysis into whether you're even a good borrower or not.
Kathy, we're almost the Brady Bunch. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Okay, my family owns a skilled nursing facility, so we're really involved with scary times right now. We are also right in the middle of the Navajo Nation, but we've been very blessed. But my question to you is, I've got employees that are requesting leave of absence without pay. Some are requesting to use their PTO. I've applied 2 banks for the PPP loan. I'm getting correspondence daily, but it's not confirmed. I've been told by one that it's been reserved. Are there any specific payroll requirements that I need to meet?
Okay. So I think there's 2 questions maybe in there, Kathy. Like, one is how to deal with these employees, but then are you giving people leave, or are you kind of forcing them to work because you need them?
No, we've had, long story short, I don't mean to take up everybody's time, but in early January, we had a scare with COVID-19 positive. It turned out that it was so low on the totem pole, it was equivalent to a common cold. However, we went full speed ahead, put all of our protocols, infection control measures in place. We were kind of ahead of the game. Just in regards to protocols and safety. And it was negative. We had no adverse outcome from that. However, we have had employees that have contacted us due to exposure. We've told them to quarantine for 14 days. I'll give you a real scary example. Last Thursday night, an employee came to work. We temped him. He was fine. Within a couple hours, he did not feel good. We sent him home. He opted to go to the hospital. He was tested. He went into self-quarantine. Indian Health Services came into our building, tested everyone on that unit. Praise the Lord, we had 27 negatives. But anyone that is home due to exposure, we are paying.
Right. Okay. Got it. So a couple things. One is it has to do with the PPP. If get the applications in, if they say it's reserved, you're going to want to find out if they have an SBA E-Trans number. That's the approval. Reserved in most bank lingo means that you've been approved. The money's reserved. They're just doing your paperwork. So that's kind of the good news. Now, the second thing has to do with the necessity of paying money out under the federal paid sick leave. And so you are presumably paying these people while they are out. You are entitled to certain tax credits and other things to do that, but you are also entitled to use your PPP money to pay those employees. So that's your good news. The loan portion that you pay out over the 8 weeks to them will be forgiven. So that's kind of the good news of the day. We've got, a question a little bit that's a little bit interesting, then we'll kind of wrap up on it, which is, if my PPP proceeds were used to add a full-time employee, does that indicate that I didn't need the loan in the first place? You got any comments on that, Adam?
Are they saying, does it impact the forgiveness?
It kind of seems, no, they're just saying, well, now if I add a full-time employee to get up to the number, do I really need the stupid money in the first place? Like, doesn't it seem dishonest?
Well, I think the government doesn't care. If people are getting hired, I think that's the whole
point. That's the whole point. We have this huge amount of unemployment. This is not, this is to help the business owners. Do not get me wrong, okay? But what this is really about is keeping people employed. And so if you're creating a position and you're bringing somebody on and you're paying them, that's one less person on unemployment. It's a good thing. And that's the reason for the program. Any final words of advice, Carrie? You're like, I don't know.
Try to avoid bankruptcy at all costs, but if you need
Yeah, go.
We
Go.
are here for you.
Okay, with that being said, we will be back next week. Do not hesitate to contact us. I can be reached at jfruitkin at Radix Law. Adam is Adam Buck, so Buck at Radix Law. Carrie Tatkin at Radix Law. And we're happy to answer your questions. Thanks so much for being here. Have a great rest of the day.